When I first started painting, I was unhappy with the results I was getting. So I did something to try and level up my painting game. Now, the interesting thing is, that time, every now and then, I see a post or a video or a podcast that says that maybe what I did was the wrong thing to do. Yet, I still feel like it's one of the best ways to improve your painting when you're a beginner. What is it? We'll get into it, and we'll let you be the ultimate decider. Am I wrong? Am I right? Is this the best way to teach a newbie to paint? Let's dive into it. Hello and welcome to Howard's Cave of Wonder. I'm Chris, aka Howard Blues. Welcome to my cave. And this is a little different of a video than what I usually put out. Usually I kind of vlog about my hobby journey and all of those things, but doing a little something different because on a recent work trip, I was listening to a podcast about painting and they had some interesting advice. They were talking about getting results, and their basic tenet of their advice was, when it comes to that situation where you have that model that you just are like, that's a really cool model and I want to do my best paint job and I'm not at that level yet, you should just ruin that model. You should just go ahead, do it, because you'll learn and you will get better. And it's okay to ruin that model. And this got me thinking about something that I did when I started painting, and it's kind of along these lines. And I will say, I have seen forum posts, I've seen other painting videos that have addressed this issue, and usually it's what I did gets hit with a negative light, but I wanted to share it because I think there's some value in it. I think there's value in it that people just aren't seeing. So what is it? Well, first, let me tell you a story. And it's a story about orcs. You see, going way back, one of the first board games that I got into that I really started collecting was a game called HeroScape. It was a very cool game. You put together kind of these hex-based tiles, and you draft a little army and have a skirmish battle against your opponent. I got in late on the game's life cycle. So it had a lot of things that you could collect and do, but that stuff it was going out of print. It was hard to get. And so I missed out on a lot of things. I loved the game, and the completionist in me wanted every piece of it. That just wasn't going to happen. So I started purchasing pre-painted models, HeroClix, and D&D. Wizards of the Coast was putting out that D&D pre-painted line. I have a whole bunch. My son has confiscated most of them and put them in the teepee behind me for him to play with. But one of the things that it clicked because of podcasts I was listening to about gaming was the idea that you could paint your own models. I hadn't thought of that ever before. And I thought, maybe this is worth a shot. And the first real set of models I purchased along this line was from Games Workshop, and it was some of their old school black orcs. I liked the models, and I thought, hey, for HeroScape, they'd make a great orc unit. So I was excited about this. Never really painted anything before, and I gave it a shot. And it didn't turn out right. I could not do the things I want to do. And let me tell you, I'm a research-based guy. When I buy a board game, I've researched it as thoroughly as I can. And when it came to learning to paint, I did all sorts of things. YouTube painting tutorials weren't quite the big thing at that time. But I was on forums, reading posts about how to paint and how to get certain effects, and looking at people. The Reaper Miniatures forums was huge for me, going into people's work in progress and There's some very great people on there who wrote some wonderful kind of like, here's my step-by-step process. And I was digesting all of this, And so in theory, when I came to paint these orcs, I knew what dry brushing was. I knew what a wash was. I understood glazing, but I never actually put these techniques. I had the technical knowledge. I didn't have the skills to do it. And so where I was finding frustration with these orcs was technically, I knew what I needed to do to paint these. However, I didn't have the skills to put it all together. When should I dry brush? How best to use a wash? How to highlight the best way? What color combinations work? If I mix this color and that color, what is that going to look like? In essence, I didn't know. I needed to get my hands dirty. I needed to try something. So while the orcs took a nice bath in simple green, because I was going to try and figure these out, I went with the next thing I could get. And truthfully, I was a poor teacher living in Montana at the time. So the best thing that I could get was a bag of dollar store army men. Very similar to a package like this. Just a plastic bag with, 40 some army men. I think this one comes with 31. Just 31 army men. This is Civil War. My first set was all World War II modern sort of stuff. I bought these army men and they became my practice models. And this is the advice that gets to be a bit controversial because I've since used this with people I've taught how to paint. So what I did was I took those models, I primed them, which was great. I learned how to prime and I experimented with. And so I wanted to showcase some of this. So luckily I had a bag of these Civil War army men from the person who I taught to paint, or at least one of the last people I taught to paint. Because we did the same method. I bought him some dollar store army men for him to learn on, and he gifted me a set of American Civil War army men. And so, for the sake of this video and to maybe argue my case, I thought I would bring these up and present these, and we'll see how they turn out. So, I took those. Civil War army men out. I took them, gave them a good coat of prime. I even wanted to demonstrate that, hey, you could, practice zenithal priming, and that didn't go well, as this video shows. So, all in all, it was an interesting mess. That's a great way to put it. A very interesting mess, at least when I tried to zenithal. I still got things to learn. It's okay. But the goal of these army men is, and this is where I get into the advice, having a product like this, cheap army men that you don't care about, they're a great way to learn these basic skills in a way that you're not as worried about your results. Now, where this becomes controversial, because we might as well put out the counterpoint. What I always hear, what sparked me to this, is people will tell you, don't waste your time on these models that, let's face it, plastic army men models are not the greatest. They're not usually in the same scale as what we paint. They have terrible mold lines. The details are all sorts of wonky. Faces are sometimes so soft in detail that good luck trying to paint them. It's a thing, like where this guy's gun gets, and his shirt kind of become one, that's a hard thing to figure out. But that's where people would say, don't waste your time on these because you're just going to be unhappy with the result. And so therefore, buy a model you love, try your best with it. And sure, it's not going to look great. You can always rebuy the model and have a go at it. My problem with this advice is, one is some of these models can be very pricey and expensive. And that's a lot to put into a hobby you just don't know if you're going to love. And trust me, when I started this off, I was cheap. I used cheap synthetic brushes. I didn't use, fancy hobby paint. I used, Apple Barrel, craft paint, which you could pick up at Walmart or any of those sorts of, Hobby Lobby and those places. Just craft paint that you had to thin because it was thicker than thick. And that's where I started. I started with that. And the goal of painting these army men, I am not trying to make these look like the most realistic army men. And that was not my goal then. I was using these as a place to test and learn some skills. Let me show you. So take dry brushing. Dry brushing is a great example because depending on who you talk to, you hear different things. When I first started dry brushing, and I'll have to excuse poor Howard, it's a little late. I didn't really think this through to make sure, hey, do I have my one of my good old dry brushes here and available to show off? But this will work. It's not the ugliest one I ever had, but actually, it's not even as ugly as I thought it was. Here's a good example. So when I first started, the thought behind dry brushing is any just terrible brush would do. I don't need a fancy brush. I just need one that has definitely seen better days. And it's okay because dry brushing is going to ruin your brush. I heard that. Then I heard it's all about a nice flat brush. Has a nice flat bristles. It works very well for that. A flat brush. Okay, so I got myself some flat brushes. Now it's makeup brushes. These little kind of round ones and such. Yeah, these are what you're supposed to use. And again, when I learned, it was no. Your brush, or at least when I first started, your brush needs to be dry because that's why it's called dry brushing. So you don't wet your brush. You just dip it into the paint and you rub as much of it off and you such, and then you paint it on your model. Now I hear your brush should be slightly damp. That gets a little different effect. So again, if you're a newbie, old brush, flat brush, makeup brush, a little bit of water, no water. That's a lot of things to really get thrown at you. And so how do you determine, hey, this is the best way to do it? So this is where the arm men come in. So in this case, I got a bit of tarnished steel here. We'll just give it a little shake. I'm going to add it to my palette. Not adding any water to it. Taking my flat tip brush. Following just that. Brushing as much of the paint off. And then this is where I have my army guy. Here he is. He's primed in black. Here's the thing. I'm not just working on what's going to be metallic because again, my result here is not a perfectly painted model. My result is to learn a technique. I'm just going to dry brush all of him. I don't really, as I said, I'm not trying to learn, hey, is this the, best way to do it? I'm trying that. So you saw in the front of the model, I just did simple up and down strokes, right? Okay, that's one result. What if I go side to side? What does that look like? Does that end up with something different? A little bit more paint here. I can also try different amounts. Like, okay, so here I tried to get as much of the paint off as possible. But what happens if I leave too much paint on? So let's dip. I'll brush some off, but not as much, so it's a bit thicker on here. Cool. Let's hit right up here by his arm. Okay, well that's a thicker coat that I'm getting on there. Okay. We have a result. And I have a miniature that I can look at the front and the back and compare and see, hey, what turned out better? What did I like? Here I used more paint. It's okay, but it obscured more of the details. I had more of it flow into places I didn't want. Here, where I used less paint, it really did hit the highlights a little bit better. So again, I'm practicing. I'm learning what paint is best to use or how much. But we can, again, go one step further because, again, I said sometimes you hear even a little bit of water helps. So, okay, let's clean this brush in water. And we're going to try and get it as dry as possible. So I'm trying to dry it out. I have a second model here. But now my brush is slightly wet because I hear that's going to make a difference. So let's dip that into the paint. Again, you're supposed to follow kind of the same technique. Brush a good chunk of that off. Okay. Let's give you a brush. And again, I'm not just doing what I think is going to be metallic. I'm doing kind of the whole model because I'm just trying to learn, is this the way I want to do it? And that's the value of it. It's not that I'm going to create a perfectly crafted model. It's that I'm going to try things. Okay. Interesting to see how that kind of came out. Yeah. I can see there's some very slight differences. If I hold these two guys up, it might not show up great on camera. But I get it. This seems a little bit smoother on this guy. But again, I feel like it flowed into a little bit more of the shadows. This one feels a bit more of the rugged. Now, like any painting technique, is one of these better than the other? No. What I have here are basically two different tries. And I might look at it and go, hey, for this model that I really want to paint, this style is the way I want it. Or I might say this style is. So it's all about trying things. And that's the value of Dollar Store Army Men. It's you can try different things. You can work on learning brush control. I know when I started, brush control was a tough thing. I'd never really done this before. What's the best way for me to hold my brush? What feels the most comfortable? How can I do little bitty lines like on this bugler here? I know it's a little hard to see, but on his chest here, he's got all of this filigree on there. That's cool. But do I have the brush control to do that? Now I do. But for me as a starter, it gave me a chance to practice on something that small. And that's the big thing. I can take and learn these techniques. I can try mixing a paint. Earlier, I was playing around. Actually, I tried to film this video once before, and I got a little ranty, a little angry. I don't know why I was so angry. It's just how it goes. But I painted this guy, at least some pants, because I was trying to show that you could practice mixing a color. And the thing about this is, I got the color right, but my consistency was off. I added a little too much water, and so you can see it didn't coat super well. again, it's a great thing to practice on. And especially when you're just beginning, having a model like this that you maybe just sits by and, hey, I want to try this color and see, does it work? And I can just paint on it. I don't care if I'm losing details with layers upon layers upon layers of paint. The goal is to just have something to practice on and something to get a desired result, something to make you go, okay, this is what I'm aiming for. And if you do that, then you can eventually go back and paint that thing that you wanted. And so here we go. The Trice Painted Orcs. Eventually, I got my skills up to a level where I could paint these guys and get the result that I wanted. Now, I'm going to tell you, as you're looking at this, now I know my lighting is a little bright because I kind of have a weird setup going because, well, there are reasons. But I'll put some pictures up of them a little bit better. And I'll tell you, these are not the best painted Black Orcs. These are not Golden Demon winners. They're not going to win a Crystal Brush. And that's okay, right? At the time that I painted these guys, I got a result I was happy with. Sure, are there things I could improve on my paint job if I were to do this again? Sure. That's the thing about painting. The more you do it, the more you learn, the better you get. But I was at least able to get a result where I'm like, I can live with that. And I enjoyed that. And I can go further. And it's because, again, I spent the time just playing around with cheap army men. I figured out how to paint reds on these. I figured out a scheme for dry brushing metallics so I could make my metallics look at least to an acceptable level. You could kind of see it on the Trice Painted Orcs. It's just a black with a dry brush on it. Sure, there's more things I could do, and actually, I haven't moved too far off of that recipe. I just have learned to improve and add in new layers, like on this spiky column I'm painting, or I've painted in with some rust effects and such. It's not done, it's a work in progress, but the goal is that I figured out how to start just getting a metallic that I could live with, and now I work on improving it. And that's the thing. Having stuff like this that you can just try, especially when you're starting out and trying to figure out how do I thin my paint. Oh, well, great, you can try that. I had never dealt with a wash before, so the first time that I painted flesh and I washed it and it looked all brown and patchy, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And then I kind of had to learn, okay, so this is a side effect if you use a wash. If you use a wash on flesh or on white, it's going to tint that. I hadn't really thought about that. Because again, I was a noob at the time. And so learning that, okay, if I do my wash, maybe I need to be careful about where I get it, maybe aim for those cracks and crevices, but that I'm also going to have to mix a little bit of that wash in with my base color to just kind of work my way back up. Had not thought of that. And it's stuff that I had to learn. And again, great way to learn. And truthfully, $1, bag's worth of army men taught me enough that I've built my hobby on it. And I've gotten better and better, but it started there. And so it's still the way that I teach people. If you were to come to me and say, Howard, teach me to paint, I'd say, great, let's grab some army men. We'd start there, just so you could practice the skills. You can get your brush control down. And hopefully get to a point then that you have the skills that you can then go, all right, I'm ready to paint that next fancy thing. So that's my advice. Again, I don't know why this one always seems to be kind of a controversial topic, but I see it every now and then when people suggest something like this, that it gets shot down. And as I said, I just wanted to add that out there. That if you do go this army man route, you're not trying to paint a perfect Union soldier or a perfect World War II soldier. You're just practicing some basic skills so you can take that model that you really are excited to paint and go, yeah, I got the skills to do it. So there you go. You agree? You disagree? Let me know in the comments below. And it's been great talking with you. If you made it this far, thank you very much. If you liked this and any of the other content on the channel, consider the like or subscribe. I ain't saying that's a very YouTube-y thing to do, but I do want the channel to grow a little bit. Not because I want to be YouTube famous or that. I just, it's fun to just share the hobby with others. So that's I think enough for what is actually very early in the morning, and hopefully we'll catch you all back down here in the cave again next time. Good night, everybody.